I do quickly want to talk about the cool suit situation that we saw today. I think we've seen this a bunch in some of these hot races, especially over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of cool suit failures. I think there's probably more than two cool suit failures today, but there's two that were very notable. Alex Bowman was very uncomfortable, was feeling sick in the race car, and Myatt Snyder proves why, if you're a race car driver, you should always bring a race suit and a helmet to the racetrack, because he had his treetop race suit, he had his helmet all prepared. He was playing spotter, if you will, at the race today, helping out. It seemed like he was helping out Fox. That's what it sounded like. He was helping out Fox. Even sent some, once he heard he might be getting into the 48 car, sent some text messages to Brad Perez, sent him some text messages back and forth asking him, like, hey, where's the breaking point in 6A? Well, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because Brad Perez just ran the track the day before in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series, and those two are very close. They're part of a certain group, if you will, a certain clique, I guess you could call them. So that was pretty cool to see those text messages, and just to see Myatt get in the car. I think Myatt is a very good race car driver. I think there is potential there. And to see him get in the 48 car, even though obviously he wasn't competing for anything, he was just helping out Hendrick Motorsports. That was a great moment for Myatt Snyder. But at the same time, having that cool suit fail for Bowman. And on the first hot race of the year, it was pretty hot in Texas. I want to say it was roughly around 85 degrees throughout a good portion of the race. There's some humidity, not a whole bunch like the Carolinas or Florida, but there was still a decent amount of humidity out there today. The first hot race of the year tends to be the hardest race of the year to deal with heat, because you just came out of winter, came out of all this cold weather. You haven't dealt with heat weather probably since October or September. So to come out in that first hot race, whether it wasn't extremely hot, but still nonetheless pretty hot out there today, to deal with the cool suit failure is horrible. And AJ, I'll talk about AJ here in a second, but to deal with the cool suit failure is horrible, because once that cool suit fails, it's pushing cold water through your suit. Once it fails, it's hot water. That water heats up in your cool suit. So it makes it way worse. It makes it way worse than it needs to be. Me personally, if I was ever a race car driver, I would never, ever wear a cool suit. That's just me personally. I know the cool suit is a big help, and I know most of the cool suit's not going to... I think I saw somebody say, oh, cool suits fail 50% of the time. It's 50-50 on the cool suits. And it's like, I wouldn't go that far. The cool suit definitely fails a decent amount, but it's definitely not 50-50. I would say 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 8 or 9 times, something like that, the cool suit ends up failing. And I just wouldn't want that, because once that cool suit fails, you might be fucked. You might be screwed for the remainder of the race, the remainder of the event. And it's just going to be an extremely difficult and uncomfortable drive for you. And Bowman just couldn't take it anymore. Got out of the race car. Bowman wasn't doing the best today, surprisingly, either. Coda's one of his better racetracks. I was very surprised he wasn't doing as strong as he was. And potentially that was possibly because of him just being so uncomfortable with the cool suit not being a cool suit. It was more like a hot suit, a heat suit, a sweatsuit, if you will. And yeah, he had to end up climbing out of the car. Now let's move on to Dinger, because AJ Allmendinger had a little bit of a scary moment, because he got iced. I don't know if there was any video per se of right when he got out of the race car, but Fox panned to his race car while they were interviewing SVG on the front straightaway for a quick second or two, and then came back again for another quick second or two, like 10 or 20 seconds later. But they quickly panned to the 16 car, and AJ Allmendinger was just laying on the ground with people around him, just standing around him. So that was very scary. And then a crowd began to build around him with safety people from NASCAR. So that was a very scary moment just to see on TV and not really get any of the background to that. So it was a little bit more promising a couple minutes later, because he did get taken off on a stretcher, which most people will say, oh, it's not very promising, but he was sitting up. He looked to be coherent. So I personally thought in that moment that he just was so extremely dehydrated. He just needed some fluids. And some of you may have saw his picture on social media saying, "Yeah, I'm good." And he had his arm bandaged to where he probably got some sort of IV, some sort of fluids pushed into his system because he was just extremely dehydrated because he had two issues. He had his cool suit fail. His cool suit failed, so it was just pushing through hot water, but also his helmet, his helmet AC also failed. It was no longer pushing cold air into his helmet. It was pushing hot air into his helmet. It was grabbing air from outside of the car and pushing it into his helmet. So I can't imagine that's a double whammy on the first hot race of the season. And for AJ Allmendinger to get out of that car and do that, I would consider Allmendinger one of the most physically fit drivers in the field. He's constantly running, he's constantly riding a bike, he's constantly working out way more than I'd say most drivers. And nowadays in NASCAR, I think drivers are more physically fit now in NASCAR than they've ever been. Because back in the day, I don't think many. I mean, there was some like Mark Martin. I think was one of the first drivers that wanted to make sure he was physically fit. But most drivers didn't really work out all that much back in the day. They would get in the car and get out of the car. That was about it. Some would work out to a certain degree, but nowadays these drivers have gyms and the team facilities and the team buildings. So to see Allmendinger, one of the most physically fit drivers in the Cup Series garage, just laying on the ground like he was, really says how horrible the conditions in that race car were throughout the day. And Dinger still ended up getting a top 10. That's amazing. To be that uncomfortable in the race car, dealing clearly with how much he had to deal with in that event, to get a top 10 is insane. So hats off to AJ Allmendinger. Hats off to him because that is very impressive. Very, very impressive. And I'm glad Allmendinger is okay. Once I saw him get put on the stretcher and him sitting up the way he was, I'm like, he's probably just very, very dehydrated and he just needs to get some fluids. And that's what it ended up being. He just needed to get some IV, needed to get some fluids, needed to get some body armor or whatever. Celsius, I don't think is going to do that for him. But you know what I'm saying? Just needed to get some electrolytes in him and just rebuild, get some water in him, get some IV. And he seemed okay. He seemed good after that. So I'm happy he's okay. I'm happy he wasn't hurt or had like heat stroke or something like that. I'm very glad it wasn't, because that initial pan to him really honestly freaked me out. I was watching the race with my dad, as I usually do, and I was like, hopefully he got out of the car and just sat down and then decided to lay down just because of how exhausted and dehydrated he was. Because Fox, don't do that, please. I know you're trying to update the fans and keep them updated on what's going on. Like they would do the same thing if someone started throwing punches in the middle of an interview. They're just going to randomly pan to the fight and then pan back to the interview and then cover the fight afterwards. But for them to just quickly pan to that number 16 Kaulig car and seeing Allmendinger just laid out on the ground and everybody surrounding him and then people kind of rushing in to help was a very scary view. Very scary view at first, but I'm glad AJ Allmendinger's okay. I think Alex Bowman's okay as well. So I'm real happy both those drivers are okay. And cool suits are a blessing, but they could also be a curse. So some of these drivers really need to think about if they want to be cool suit guys or not, because we head to Phoenix this next week, potentially could be pretty hot. Head to Vegas the next week, could also be pretty hot. And then we're getting into the springtime, into the summertime. So a lot of these drivers are going to be wearing cool suits for the next couple of months. So it's something to really think about. But let me know your thoughts on cool suits. Let me know your thoughts on AJ Allmendinger, Alex Bowman, Myatt Snyder. Let me know your thoughts on all of that.